Thank you very much. Allie and Jessica, Allie Magnan and Jessica Nackert are representatives of the DNR. They are down in Madison right now, but they are the volunteer coordinators for the Snapshot Wisconsin program, and I will let them take it because they have a wonderful program for us.
Thank you so much for that introduction. All right, we're going to start sharing our screen. Is it showing up for you?
It is.
All right. Let's see if I can pull it up here. This one. Here. All right, perfect. Okay, so as Beth just said, I'm Jessica Nackert, and Allie's going to join us in the second half of the program here. But we both work for the Wisconsin DNR. We're both volunteer coordinators for the Snapshot Wisconsin project, which we're going to talk about today. But we first want to start off by thanking Laura and Beth for this opportunity to be here and to share this project with you all. And if anyone has questions, you can drop them in the chat today, and we'll answer anything at the end or throughout in the chat as well. So yeah, feel free. Otherwise, we'll get started. Okay, so before I get started, I just want to quickly acknowledge the rest of the Snapshot Wisconsin team. They help handle the day-to-day logistics and data management for the entire project. And over the last year, we've also expanded the IT side of our team to better serve our volunteers and to improve the project as a whole. So we're going to start off with the genesis of this Snapshot Wisconsin project. So for those of you who maybe aren't familiar with the project, Snapshot Wisconsin is a large-scale citizen science project. It's used to monitor wildlife year-round through a statewide network of trail cameras. Snapshot Wisconsin is hosted by the Wisconsin DNR, but we work in collaboration with the University of Wisconsin-Madison, NASA, UW Extension, and many other organizations. Support for the project is provided by the Pittman-Robertson Wildlife Restoration Program. Snapshot Wisconsin started in 2016, and it started as a small pilot project where only a few counties throughout the state were involved. But since then, it's expanded to be across the entire state of Wisconsin to monitor wildlife. So the project launched with two major goals. The first is to support wildlife management decision-making by providing relevant data. And the second is to connect with the public through citizen science by providing a unique opportunity to engage in natural resources throughout the state. So I'm now going to go into more about how the project works and ways that you can get involved. And there's two main ways that the public can participate in the Snapshot Wisconsin project. So the first way is to become part of our trail camera network by hosting one or more trail cameras. One of the requirements to host a trail camera is to have access to 10 or more acres of land. Most of our volunteers host a camera on their own property, but you can also host a camera on land belonging to a friend or even a family member, or even public land. So maybe DNR managed lands or Forest Service lands or even county parks, as long as you have the appropriate permissions. And you also need to have access to a computer and internet access. So this is in order to upload those photos and classify the wildlife in them from your trail camera. And finally, the last thing you need is the ability to check the camera every 3 months for at least 1 year. This allows the project to continuously collect data of natural wildlife behavior from each camera location throughout the state. Another interesting part of involvement with the project is a separate opportunity to host trail cameras specifically for elk monitoring. So these cameras are located in Black River Falls, Clam Lake, and Flambeau River State Forest, where the elk are reintroduced into Wisconsin. So for the purposes of our project, we've divided the state into 6,273 survey blocks, and each block is a quarter township, so this is 9 square miles. And at full capacity, we'd ideally have about 1 camera per survey block. So for anyone interested in hosting a trail camera, you can sign up for a particular survey block through our online application form. This is available at signup.snapshotwisconsin.org. And once you're accepted into the program, you have the opportunity to complete some training, and then you receive all the necessary equipment that goes with it. Once you have all the equipment, the third step is to deploy your camera and conduct camera checks, as we said, about every 3 months. Our Snapshot cameras are made by Bushnell, and they have preset settings and take encrypted photos. So meaning that not anyone can just walk up to the camera, remove the SD cards, and then view those photos. We have a specialized upload program so that you go through the process and it decrypts the photos for you. And then after you've uploaded your photos, you can then view the images and classify the wildlife that's shown in them. So as mentioned before, there's two main ways to participate in the project. One, as I just discussed, is to host a trail camera, and the other is to identify critters showing up on Snapshot cameras from all over the state. And this is on our crowdsourcing platform. It's hosted by Zooniverse. So photos that volunteers maybe aren't able to identify, or the species in them are difficult to identify, they're uploaded to Zooniverse. And then on this platform, multiple volunteers will view each of the photos, and then they reach a consensus classification on it. Overall, this provides a highly accurate species identification. It's also a great way to become involved in the project and see wildlife from across Wisconsin if you don't have the ability to monitor a trail camera. We also thought it would be interesting to share with you all about how this project was impacted during the pandemic. So on Zooniverse, that platform I was just talking about, we had some interesting findings. So as you can see here, we found a 20% increase in the number of users per day. That's a giant jump. And this led to a massive increase in classifications and users on the platform, which is great. We love having more involvement with our program. As you can see from the diagrams all the way at the bottom of the screen also, the amount of classifications completed throughout the week also ended up leveling out and increasing overall. So the overall effort by users increased on Zooniverse, which was amazing. So now we're going to go into a little bit more of the current status of the project. This is a really great visual to show you some data from this past January. So this is a really great view of the whole state, and it gives you a clear view of which blocks are occupied currently by trail camera hosts. And it shows a good view of those 3 elk monitoring locations that I mentioned earlier that are a special part of the project. So of the just under 2,000 volunteers that we have involved, 15% of them identify as educators. So this means maybe in the classroom setting or leading youth groups or even giving nature talks all over the state. So together they have engaged over 15,000 individuals through the Snapshot Wisconsin trail cameras and photo classifications on Zooniverse. We really value our connections with educators as they allow us to reach many more people, as you can see, and they allow us to engage with students in conservation work who may not have access or experience in the outdoors. I'd also love to share some of the quotes from our educators who are very involved with Snapshot Wisconsin. So here's a quote from Skylar. He said, "It's exciting to share with students why their work on this project matters and how they're contributing to science that has an impact. So we really value the opportunity to connect with students and give them the chance to engage with real world science." Another one comes from Tim. He said his goal as an educator is to be a catalyst for experiential learning, and Snapshot Wisconsin is all about making sure people get a chance to be involved. So we're all for that, and I think what Tim says really encompasses one of the main goals of this project. I'd also love to share a recent milestone of the project. So on October 29th, the 50 millionth photo was uploaded to our Snapshot database, and we celebrated this milestone by highlighting some of our favorite photos from around the state. So as you can see here, we created an interactive map. It showcases photos and information about the species captured on Wisconsin cameras throughout all the different counties. And you can explore this on your own after the presentation. It's at 50million.snapshotwisconsin.org. But before that, we'd also love to share with you some of what our volunteers are seeing on their trail cameras and see if you can identify these as we go along the way. So this first photo here, this is from Sawyer County, which is in northern Wisconsin, and this is one of the charismatic shots of the animals that we get on our trail cameras. This is a bull elk. It's easy to spot that he's not a white-tailed deer based on his really large size. He has some nice dark fur around his neck and legs, so this is just one of the really great photos that we can get of elk throughout our state. And this next one also shows a snowier version of a bull elk, also from Sawyer County. And I think this is a really great example of how our trail cameras capture pictures of wildlife in all seasons. This next one here, we also capture some really interesting interactions between species. So as you can see all the way on the left there and around the photo, that's a flock of turkeys. And just to the right of them, we have one of our white-tailed deer. So maybe something that you wouldn't see if you're just out in one of our parks or, you know, on your own private land. I think our cameras are really great at capturing these kinds of interactions. Here's another one on the left there, that's a crow, and just down to the right, we have a pileated woodpecker, so some interesting interactions between bird species. And here's another one, this is one of my favorites. On the right there, that is a striped skunk down in the grass, and just to its left, that is a coyote staring right at the camera. So cool night shots as well. We also get really interesting interactions between the same species. So if you look in this photo, it looks like a family of black bears playing in front of one of our cameras. We also catch interesting interactions between this black bear and a cub as well. So lots of great photos. Here's another great example of the same species. So here we have two male deer, known as bucks, as you probably know, and they're sparring during the rut. Just after, we also have this trio of a doe, a buck, and a fawn all together in front of one of our cameras. We've also caught some of our state animal on our camera. So here's a couple badgers just next to a cornfield. And we also get some really great pictures of young on our camera. So here is a pair of sandhill cranes along with one of their colts. Here's another great example of a species that you may not always see when you're out in one of our forests. Here's a bobcat with a kitten. And this next compilation is a favorite for many. It's a good compilation to watch a raccoon carry their young across the screen of one of our cameras. But overall, we just capture some really awesome photos of wildlife. So this is definitely one of our favorites that's shared around a lot. This is a group of otters wandering through a large field of grass. Up next, we have one of our coyotes staring down one of our cameras. And then this one, this is a really interesting one. This is a porcupine climbing up a tree. And this is pretty rare, as you don't see many daytime photos of porcupines very often. They're mainly active during the night. Oops, sorry about that. Here's one of a turkey that we've caught with spreading its wings. And here's another really great one of one of our reintroduced bull elk in the state. And then we also catch some really good action shots. So this is a really great representation of one of those. This is a bald eagle flying towards one of our cameras. And of course, in all these photos, we do get a handful of deer selfies, which always make us laugh. So we have a good compilation of those to share with you all. And for any birders that might be watching, we do collect a lot of different photos of birds throughout the state. So this one is of a Cooper's hawk flying in front of one of our cameras. Then down on the ground here, we have a picture of a ruffed grouse in the wintertime. This here is a great blue heron. And just after that, up on the right there, that's a tree swallow. We also catch lots of woodpeckers. So here's a red-headed woodpecker. And then going back to a bit larger bird, here's a great shot that we got of a short-eared owl. And we also do some monitoring of prairie chickens in the state. But other than all the great photos that we collect, we do get a lot of photos that look like this. So maybe take your time, see if you can guess what this would be. It might be a little bit difficult. But this is actually a white-tailed deer, so it looks like it might be running away from the camera. That's its head on the left and its tail standing up all the way on the right there. But we do catch a lot of photos like this as well, which can make it a bit difficult, but that's why it's great to have platforms like Zooniverse where we can get a consensus on photos like this. Here's another shot of a close-up animal that might be hard to catch, but this is probably also a deer. Our cameras are usually located 3 feet above the ground, so this would be a perfect height for a deer to come up to the camera as well. And then this is a really interesting action shot. This is actually a gray fox climbing up a tree. They're actually the only canids that can climb trees. So this was an interesting capture from one of our trail cameras. And then this last photo we wanted to share with you, this is actually a bear nose. So one black bear decided to wander up to one of our cameras one day and check it out. Well, we hope you enjoyed all those photos, but now I'm going to pass it off to Allie. She's going to give some more information on the data side of the project.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Yeah, so I am happy to talk a little bit about the types of data we get with the Snapshot Wisconsin project. The project is more than just that fun collection of photos, and the data is used for scientific research and wildlife management decisions. I'm going to take you through a little bit of what our data set looks like here. So here we have it spread out here. Within our data set, 24% are animal photos. You see we capture a lot of blanks. Some photos go unmarked. And then there's time-lapse photos, which is a special project through the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And then human photos, which are all removed by our volunteers. Within that 24% there of our photos that are animals, 66% of those photos are deer. So of course we get lots and lots of great photos of deer in the project, and you can see the breakdown there of the different other species that we get. Of course, lots of squirrels, raccoons, turkeys, and going on from there, you can see the breakdown. Those deer photos are really, really important to us though, because we use that data for calculating fawn-to-doe ratios. So these are found by dividing the number of fawns that we see in our trail camera photos by the number of does that they're with. And this is during the summer months when fawns have their spots and they can be identified as fawns. And this is really, really important because it is used as one of the major components for assessing the size of our wildlife, or the size of our white-tailed deer population in the state. So really, really important data collection being used right here at the DNR. And here you can see the camera sites from 2020 that were contributing to those fawn-to-doe ratios. So just a cool map here showing the number of locations that the data was usable, and we're able to contribute to that that data collection and analysis. So really cool stuff. Also, as we've mentioned, that we have cameras that are deployed specifically for monitoring elk. And at the start of every year, DNR staff begin compiling a very large data set of all these elk sightings in those 3 blue areas there you see on the map there. And they compile all these sightings from the previous calendar year. So when this happened this year, they were compiling all the data from 2020. And then once that's compiled, it's used to calculate the total number of elk that live in the state. And this method has been used, introduced into Wisconsin. So it's really, really important data collection that's happening here with the project. And we have more than 250 cameras, which is over 10% of all of our Snapshot Wisconsin cameras that are dedicated specifically to monitoring elk in the state. And they're clustered in those 3 areas, as I mentioned, and they're arranged to do a grid-like pattern, very similar to the rest of the state, but they're at a greater density. So the chances of capturing elk are a lot higher. Besides estimating the population as a whole, we also do a similar thing to fawn-to-doe ratios, but this is calf-to-cow ratios. So this is the elk classes in general, so calves, cows, and bulls. And then it helps to estimate population parameters and help us understand what is happening with the population. And these population parameters are things that are really, really important indicators of characteristics of the population. So here we have recruitment. So that's the birth rate, mortality, which is the death rate, and those survival rates of different classes of elk. So really, really interesting research happening with some of our data. Our data also is used to provide wolf photo locations for annual wolf monitoring. So we pick up on wolf locations on our cameras, and that contributes to other research that happens on wolves in the state. In addition, we have some new projects starting up looking at turkey hen-to-poult ratios, bear litter sizes, and also some fur bearer data that's happening with one of our colleagues. And it's some really, really interesting research that will inform decision-making throughout the state. Our Snapshot Wisconsin cameras also capture some really, really cool species. And throughout the years, we've captured some really interesting and rare species that you don't see often. So I'll give you a moment to think about it. But on the left-hand side, who do you think those legs could belong to? Very long legs. And for reference, our cameras are deployed like 3 feet off the ground. So if that gives any perspective for you, that photo on the left, those legs belong to a moose. Yes, a moose. So yeah, that was our first moose that was ever captured in the state. That was in Vilas County back in 2018. We have this whooping crane in the top there, which was a really, really beautiful series of a whooping crane flying in and spreading its wings. And that was the first time we detected a whooping crane, and with the Snapshot Wisconsin camera. On the right-hand side there, we have a martin, which is also was from Vilas County, but another really interesting detection from Snapshot, and helped to contribute a location data there for that. So that was really cool. And then, of course, a cougar down at the bottom. That was our first cougar, which was detected in 2020. So yeah, some really, really cool species that we're detecting with Snapshot Wisconsin cameras, just by having lots of cameras out in the field monitored by our wonderful volunteers. Going into the moose detections a little bit further here, we had lots of moose detections in 2020. To date, the project has seen 12 total moose observations, and 8 of those were in 2020. And based on the images and the location data, we believe that some of the observations might have been the same animal that was traveling through those northern counties there. And the map that you're seeing here shows the counties in which moose were detected with the project. And of course, we have more than just fun collections of photos, and I've shared a little bit about what we're using those photos for. And now I'm going to take you through how we visualize our data. So here we have our data life cycle. So you see animals in front of a trail camera. They're captured there. The volunteer uploads those photos to our database. And from there, that goes through some data validation and analysis, quality control kind of things. And then that ends up with presentations and reports. So all that wonderful research I just shared with you. And we found that there is a gap between our data validation and analysis and the data that we're getting from the volunteers. And our volunteers really weren't seeing what their data was being used for. They weren't really getting an idea of how they're contributing to that bigger picture. So we came up with the data dashboard, and it was developed with the goal of modernizing the way that we communicate and provide data to the public, stakeholders, decision makers, all of the above. In the case of Snapshot, our volunteers are really what make this project possible. So we definitely want to relay back all the wonderful information that they are providing. And so we know through program evaluation that our volunteers is really, their participation in the project and continued engagement is really linked to the feeling that they're contributing to wildlife monitoring and management. So I'm going to share with you a little bit of our data dashboard here. And this is really focusing on closing that loop and bringing the data that the volunteers are collecting to the volunteer. So let me just give me one moment here. I'm going to share the data dashboard. Beth, would you be able to confirm that you're able to see this? Okay, looks like it's loading here. So yeah, I'd be happy to take you through a little bit about our data dashboard as it loads here. So here, this is really all of our data that is available for the project is accessible to the public on this data dashboard. So here, if I scroll down a little bit, on the left-hand side, we can see all of these species of interest. We have this data from all of these species on this list, and you're able to explore. So here we have the bear selected, and we can see where bear have been detected in the state. And you can go and look in county by county. See here in Oconto County, bear have been detected on 25 of 39 cameras. And over here in Door County, there have been no bear detections yet, or as the end of 2020, there has not been any bear detections in Door County on Snapshot Wisconsin cameras. Now, doesn't mean that bear aren't there. It just means that we haven't seen it on our cameras. So this is an interesting way to explore that. You can also move over to the right-hand side here and see bear activity throughout the day or throughout months of the year. So I'm going to start here by hour throughout the day, and you can see that bear are very active in the evening, and it looks like the most detections that we're having with bear happen around 8 p.m. So it's really interesting to see these patterns between species. And then if I switch over to by month, we see that bear are most active during the summer months, which is to be expected. They go into torpor hibernation in the winter there in the winter months, and then they are active again in the summer and sort of spring, summer, and fall. So that's a really interesting way to visualize that. And you can download all of this data yourself. You can look at it yourself. You can download the data set for individual species. So it's a really, really easy way for volunteers and the public alike to really look at the kind of data that's collected. And you can go through and change the species that you're looking at. You can also sort the map. See, here we have it by county. We can also sort it by management units. So you see here we have the bear management units, and just a different way to visualize the map. And also ecological landscapes. If you bear with me as it loads here. So these are interesting. So here we have Central Sands, forest, northern forest here. Door County would be Lake Michigan coastal ecological landscape. So really interesting ways to explore this. And you can also select the date range of the data. I don't know if you see here in the bottom left. You can change the dates. Here we're showing all data from January of 2017 until December of 2020. So that's all the data we have available right now. And there's a lot of really great information to kind of dive into this data and help guide you along. And if you're interested in exploring this on your own time, a great way to get started is clicking this Get Started link. And it gives you some questions to kind of get you started and get you engaging with the dashboard. And you can click and see the answers to the questions and kind of quiz yourself as you're using the dashboard. So really cool stuff. So yeah, and we also, something that's important to note here is that the species that we have listed are species that we have a high level of confidence in our classifications and a high level of confidence that they have been identified correctly. So if you see a species, or if you notice a species is missing there, it means that we do not have, or we do not consider the data that we have collected to be scientifically reliable. And there's more information about that here at this link, and you can read about it. And if ever you have any questions, we're always happy to help, and always taking feedback on our project products. So now let me switch back to the presentation. And we went through the data dashboard a little bit, and this data dashboard launch was really, really exciting for the project. It, like I've mentioned, it provides really readily available data. Happy to share that with you. This is just how we broke it down. So yeah, if you have any questions, or if you're exploring it on your own time and would like more information, we're always happy to field your questions there. And as we wrap up today, I'd like to really mention that this project is really only possible through people-powered research. Citizen Science are wonderful volunteers that help us with this project. And it's so rewarding to work with people who are passionate about wildlife and who care about the individual animals, and they volunteer their time to spend on this project. And what makes this partnership unique is that we have our trail camera volunteers in Wisconsin that we work with one-on-one. Jessica and I are volunteer coordinators, and we work with them on a day-to-day basis. And they're all from Wisconsin. And then we also have our Zooniverse community, and our Zooniverse volunteers are all over the world, and they're contributing to our Snapshot project on Zooniverse. So that's really, really cool to know that people all around the world are learning about Wisconsin wildlife through our project and through this process. I'd like to give some acknowledgements here. We have our Snapshot team at the Wisconsin DNR, all our names listed there. Of course, we have the folks on Zooniverse that allow that project to keep running, folks at the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point, the University of Wisconsin-Madison, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, the Wisconsin Society of Science Teachers, the Natural Resources Foundation Partnership, and of course, the thousands of volunteers without whom this project would not be possible. So we really, really thank you for giving us the opportunity to present here today. I know we're coming up on a half-hour presentation here, but we'd love to field any questions that you may have. And you can also shoot us an email anytime at dnrsnapshotwisconsin@wisconsin.gov. And you can find more information on our project website. And you can access that really easily by going to dnr.wi.gov and searching keyword Snapshot Wisconsin. We're really thankful to be able to share our story here today, and really appreciate you all listening. And so if we have any questions of anybody in the audience, feel free to drop them in the chat now. Otherwise, feel free to contact us via email, and we're happy to help.
Thank you, Jessica and Allie. I have a quick question. I've been trying to work with this a little. I'm the reference librarian in Sturgeon Bay, and I've noticed that you need to have a pretty big piece of property in order to have a camera. How do the educators with the students do that? Do they put them in the parks, or where do they go?
Yeah, oftentimes educators put cameras on school forest lands. We have lots of educators who deploy cameras in the school forest, and that's a really simple signing of a form that allows that permission to take place there. We also have educators that have cameras in state forest. We have an educator who drives up to our elk grids to help monitor the elk there. So to answer your question very simply, it's really on public land or on school run land that our educators participate on. We also have some educators that don't host a trail camera, that they just participate on Zooniverse, and they help build that into their curriculum and having students explore photos from across the state on there. So yeah, educators can participate in lots of different ways.
And in Door County, for example, I noticed there's quite a few places that don't have cameras yet. Do you have to have a big piece of property out in the country in order to do this, or how would you qualify?
Yeah, and we ask that our volunteers have at least 10 acres of natural area, and we are flexible, and we will look at individual cases to decide whether or not this is a good location for a trail camera. And really, the basics of what that comes down to is we want to make sure we're capturing natural wildlife movement. So how animals move throughout the landscape naturally, not inhibited by homes or fences or farmyards and other animals and that kind of thing. So there may be some blocks in Door County or anywhere in the state that aren't really suitable to have a trail camera, but we do our best to work with our volunteers to find good locations. And yeah, like I said, we're always really flexible. If you think you have an area that you'd like to deploy a trail camera, but you don't, there's not quite 10 acres of natural area, we can look into it, and we can decide if that would be a good location to deploy it. And if it's not a good location, we can always work with you to find public land nearby that would be a better spot to deploy a trail camera.
Okay, and I noticed when I was looking at the data dashboard that it does not show many cranes here in Door County. Why would that be? Because I see them myself when I'm driving around the countryside quite a bit, just because we don't have enough cameras in the right areas.
Yeah, it can come down to the number of cameras. And just not having a camera in Door County in the location that a sandhill crane might frequent. So a lot of the data collection we do is this really big data set from across the state to help with these kinds of numbers. So individual blocks aren't really looked at that often at like an individual block scale. If there's volunteers out there who would or people who would love to become volunteers in Door County, we'd love to have you apply for an open block, and we can start capturing photos of sandhill cranes in Door County. So they're there, and our data dashboard doesn't necessarily say that they're not there. It's just our cameras haven't detected it yet. Or the volunteers haven't classified photos of cranes in those areas.
And you did show some pictures where the animals are very fuzzy. Is it better to try to guess, or if you really can't tell, to pass on and say there's no animal, or what would be the answer to that?
Yeah, so we get this question a lot. So this is a really good question, Laura. And how we handle that is we ask our volunteers, whether they're a trail camera host or a Zooniverse participant, to make their best guess. And how this works with trail camera hosts is we have found through accuracy analysis that our volunteers are actually really good at classifying photos from their camera. They're really good at it. They know their camera site. They know the kind of wildlife that shows up there. And oftentimes they're right. And they're very accurate in giving classifications. So we ask that they make their best guess. If they classify a photo as a rare species, oftentimes those photos would be given a second look by someone at the DNR or an expert to give them a classification or a final classification. And in the case of Zooniverse, as Jessica mentioned, those photos are uploaded and the photos reach a consensus classification. So multiple individuals will look at one photo and give it a classification. And then depending on what species is the consensus, it will either be retired and will be given that final classification, or it will stay on Zooniverse to have additional eyes on the photo to try to determine what it is. Sometimes, of course, there's photos that you can't really tell, and that's okay, of course, but sometimes even the data, like if you classify it as a cottontail rabbit, when in fact it's a squirrel, even that kind of data is really valuable because you know it's a small mammal. You know, you can still draw things from that without having the correct classification in those cases. But oftentimes we can reach really great level of accuracy, whether it's through our trail camera hosts or our volunteers on Zooniverse. But the answer is to just make your best guess. And we have systems like quality control systems in place to make sure that our data is reliable.
And when you're looking at each picture, is there any way to tell what part of the state it's in, or is that disguised?
Yeah, so when a photo makes it to Zooniverse, there is the only information that is shared as far as like location information is just the county in which the photo was taken. So there's no GPS coordinates, there's no volunteer name associated with it. There's not even like anything, the block isn't shared there. It's really just at the county level. And we do that to protect our volunteers' privacy. We also make sure that our volunteers do not have any human objects or houses in the background or a road in the background of their photos. And that's really to just protect privacy and keep that camera location private. So that way someone on Zooniverse couldn't look at a photo and be like, oh, that's my friend Joe's camera. And it really just, protects their privacy and keeps those things from happening. And it also results in really great animal photos uninterrupted by human objects or houses in the background.
Well, thank you. I've really enjoyed trying to guess the animals, and I'm going to, when my grandchildren come to Door County, I'm going to make sure that they give it a try and watch this video to learn more about it.
Yeah.
Beth, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. I have enjoyed watching all of these things. Is that a martin on the screen?
That is actually a fisher on the screen.
A fisher on the screen.
Yeah. So
oh my goodness.
We're talking about classifications. Yeah, that's a great guess. So martin is a great guess. Martins are a very similar mustelid, but this is a fisher.
Long back legs, short front legs.
Yes. Yeah. And you can see another way to tell that it's a fisher is that gradient in color from the nose to the tail. So you see a lighter brown on the front of the animal, and then it is a really pretty gradient to really dark brown on the tail. And fisher tails are very long. This photo doesn't really do it justice, but yeah, fisher tails are very long and fluffy.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, thank you very much, both Allie and Jessica, for all of your time with us today. We really appreciate it. So this makes a wonderful addition to our Tales and Tales summer reading program. And thank you very much to both of you.
Thank you so much for having us. It's been a pleasure.